Tired of shows that bark and scream at you? This is the show that speaks to you.
Here's the game plan.
It's the Big E Sports Extravaganza, where we go inside the issues, present a variety of topics, and feature some of the biggest sports guests on the planet. Now, here's the one and only, award-winning Elissa Walker Campbell.
Hey, welcome back to the Big E Sports Show. I'm Elissa Walker Campbell, and it is always such a privilege to welcome in one of our all-time favorite guests. That is Pro Football Hall of Famer. He is a Super Bowl championship coach, and that is Dick Vermeil. Coach Vermeil's leadership, heart, and passion for the game have inspired generations, and we are thrilled to get his perspective on the 2025 NFL season, especially the Chiefs, the surging Broncos, and just so many storylines across the league. Happy Friday. Good to have you back on the show, Coach.
Always nice to be invited. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about your former team. The Chiefs are 5-4, still talented, but not quite the juggernaut that we have grown accustomed to seeing. So what's just your overall read on the team halfway through the year?
Well, I think they're a very fine football team. May not be what they have been when they are the best football team, but they're good in most categories. They're very sound on defense. My gosh, they're the number 4 team on defense right now, and they're the number 6 team on offense. And that's a real fine combination, especially here in the midseason. And I anticipate them getting better. I already do.
Uh-huh.
But, I don't think there's an elite team right now in the league. So I think anybody that can stay healthy now, like the Chiefs, might be able to. Any team that's playing well now has a good chance to ascend, because there isn't some team just dominating like the Eagles did a year ago.
Well, there is a lot more parity, but, when we talk about the Chiefs, the name that is synonymous, of course, is Patrick Mahomes, 2-time MVP, 3-time Super Bowl MVP. Just give us your assessment of what you have seen this year from his play and just his overall leadership.
Well, actually, I think his stats and everything are up this year in contrast to last year. And, he has spoiled us.
Uh-huh.
With so many great performances. There's nobody does a better job with the ball in his hand on a broken play. You almost think sometimes they organize these broken plays so that he can execute the big play. It's amazing how many times he does that. I think it drives defensive coaches crazy, because they coach the great discipline of the defense. They execute it. Then the offense breaks down, and he goes out and makes a big play against his sophisticated defense. So he can drive coordinators crazy and make Andy Reid very happy at the same time.
Speaking of Andy Reid, he has been one of the most consistent coaches in football. And at this stage of the season, what kind of message do you think he needs to deliver in that locker room to keep everyone focused and fresh for that final push?
I think Andy, he's a very consistent, structured head football coach. I don't think he ever gets too low, and I don't think he ever gets too high. I think he remains in a very, very good frame of mind as a leader, and I think because of it, his team reflects him. And, play smart, don't turn the ball over, take the ball away, finish plays with great intensity, execute the game plan, and be structured and disciplined. But, he's not one of these emotional rah-rah guys. He's very matter-of-fact and almost impossible to misunderstand.
Well, you have certainly led teams through the grind of November and December. Let's talk about just some of the keys for Kansas City. You talk about staying disciplined and of course, being healthy, but just how do you play your best football when the games start to matter the most?
You've been building on your structure all year. And, of course, Andy Reid's structure at the Chiefs has been built for a number of years. They're always good. So sometimes they spoil you, and people, including me, expect them to be good as they used to be or were last year or were 3 weeks ago, But I kind of believe Andy has demonstrated the ability to keep his team on an even keel and gradually get better, win the close games by making the great decisions at the end of the football game, the use of the clock, the use of the type of offense or defense that they need to execute to win that football game. Last year, nobody's ever done it any better than they did and win those tight games. And they proved how important coaching was by getting to the Super Bowl, but they didn't have enough horses once they got there.
What do you think separates the team that gets to the Super Bowl from one who just makes the playoffs?
The gifted player. The player that takes the offense or defensive scheme and takes it beyond the design. It just makes a great play out of individual talent. And coaching always makes a difference. Talent always makes a difference. But the individual player, many times, is the guy that wins the big game. And normally it's your quarterback. Sometimes it's a great one-hand catch by a wide receiver or Kelsey tight end catch that, or a great sack by a pass rusher or somebody interception on defense. But many times the big tight game is made by an individual that is a super player, and he demonstrates it in that tight situation.
Yeah. Hey, we have highlighted the Chiefs. Let's talk about one of the emerging threats in the AFC West, and that, of course, is the Denver Broncos. They are 8-2. Do you view them as the biggest threat to the Chiefs overall?
I do. They're playing extremely well on defense, and they have a chance to break the NFL sack record, okay? But I'm a little concerned about their offense. Sean Payton is one of the fine offensive football coaches in the history of the league, in my opinion, okay? But so far, they haven't been productive as I would have thought them to be. And I'm sure that Sean feels the same way. Hey, they win last night, 10-7?
Yeah.
Okay. You would think they would score more points than that just because of the coaching and the scheme and the young quarterback. And he's shown great ability to come back in the fourth quarter and play extremely well. And I think maybe Sean sooner or later is going to start the first quarter like they end the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden they'll be an explosive football team.
It has been remarkable to watch just Sean Payton and how he has clearly just rebuilt Denver's confidence and their culture just overall as a coach. I mean, what stands out to you the most about his leadership and his philosophy and how he's flipped the script?
Well, he's a product of Bill Parcells. And how can you fail if you're a solid product and believe in what Bill did? He said, Sean is structured. He knows what he wants. He calls his own offense. He knows what his players can do, and he asks them to do it on a consistent basis. He doesn't ask them to do things he doesn't think they can do well. And he's backed by maybe the number one defense football right now. They're really outstanding on defense. And it's just a matter of time before I think the offense becomes a little more explosive or more consistent through all four quarters. And that's because of his experience in coaching. He's won a Super Bowl. Probably put Drew Brees in the Hall of Fame here coming up soon. So I have almost blind confidence in his ability to coach a Super Bowl winning football team. You're listening
to The Voice, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Super Bowl winning coach, the great Dick Vermeil, with us on the Big E Sports Show. And we got to highlight a number of your other former teams, and that, of course, is the Philadelphia Eagles. They currently are 6-2. Just how impressed are you with what Nick Sirianni has built?
Well, you just have to look at his win-loss record and what he's done. He's done a tremendous job. He reaps the rewards of a great personnel department led by Howie Roseman. And all coaches would like to have that kind of support. And he's done a wonderful job with them. Vic Fangio came in last year and turned that defense around, demonstrating how important it has to be or is to have a great defensive coordinator on your side when you're more specifically an offensive coach. The Eagles aren't what they were. They spoil you. They were so good last year. I think the Eagle team last year by far was the best team the Eagles have ever had in the history of their franchise, and maybe one of the top 5 teams of all time last year. They are not that. And right now they're winning on big plays coming, and actually not playing that well. And I kind of believe coming out of the bye week they just experienced that they'll be a better football team than they have been. They've got to improve their third down conversion offense. They've got to get in the red zone more often than they have, and they've got to be able to kick more field goals. And they brought in some help defensively now with a couple of new defensive players, and I think Vic Fangio will take advantage of them. But right now, I think they're either going to get a lot better and become what they are close to what they were, or if they don't, they'll have a hard time being a playoff team.
The addition of some defensive players, but let's talk some offense. Jalen Hurts has truly become one of the premier leaders in the NFL, just so calm and composed and just so disciplined. I mean, in your mind, Dick, what sets him apart from other young quarterbacks?
Well, I think from a physical standpoint, he has no limitation. He can throw the ball. He's an exceptionally fine. He can run with the football extremely well. He runs the offense game day very well. I don't think he has any limitation. Now, I'm not in the huddle with him. I'm not in the meeting room with him or anything like that. And I really don't know him well other than how he plays the game. But to me, he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. It's just, I've said this many times here on a local radio show. I don't think he has a limitation. The only limitation that he might have is what they don't ask him to do. What can he not do?
Yeah. Everything he touches turns to gold. And let's take time now as we close out our interview, just reflecting on your legendary career, leading the Rams to the Super Bowl title, rebuilding programs in Philadelphia and Kansas City. You know, Coach, what are you most proud of? The championships or the relationships or just the journey itself?
You know, I really love the struggle. I love the process it takes to move from not very good to the best, because you learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about yourself. You test your own self-discipline. You test everything you have as a leader. You know, and watching players grow, watching them mature as people, as well as players, and just respecting how much advantage they take of adversity and use it as an ally. You know, it's fun to watch that. It's painful sometimes. My first year at the Rams, we lost 8 in a row. 2 years later, we won a world championship. Why? Because we worked very, very hard. We brought in some very fine players, brought in some very fine football coaches, and all of a sudden we got it done. But the reason we got it done, I think, is that they really handled adversity in a positive way. They didn't beat themselves down. They pumped themselves up and got better each time they made a mistake. And I think that's what's really fun in watching an organization grow and being the leader of that organization.
Yeah. And you've always been known as a coach who led with your heart and had so much empathy. How would you say, that emotional approach shape your success both on and off the field?
Well, I think it's very critical, Elissa, that you're emotionally honest and humble, and people really know who you are and what you are. And you can't be embarrassed to show who you are and what you are. And when players really understand you and know you, whether you're a rah-rah guy, an emotional guy, or an intense, tough guy, once they buy into who you really are and you're authentic, you've got a chance. If they don't buy into who you are, regardless of your profile and what type of personality you have, you aren't going to win. You aren't going to win. And me, I've always been an emotional guy. I can't help it. That's just the way I was born. And maybe the way I was raised, and coming up in coaching, I learned that too. It's not a crime to let people know you really care. Okay, It's not a crime to let them really see what you're all about. And I think in most instances, that has been a positive for me.
We are winding down our time. Pro Football Hall of Fame coach, Super Bowl champion, the great Dick Vermeil with us. And, you know, after all those decades in coaching, you built another winner, and that is Vermeil Wines, into a thriving brand. Let's talk about just what inspired that transition, and how does it reflect the same attention to detail that defined your coaching?
Well, you know, Alyssa, I grew up in Calistoga, the north end of the Napa Valley. I grew up helping my grandfather Vermeil make our family wines. Okay, and the grapes we actually picked were from a vineyard my great-grandfather on the Italian side of my family used to own. So, you know, it was part of my profile, and I always enjoyed it. My family enjoyed it, French-Italian family. And because I had good friends I grew up with, we made some wine together, and then I have some close friends with money, and they turned it into a business, okay? We don't make any money, but we do make good wine. What we do is pay our bills, okay? And we make good wines. In fact, I think our 2023 vintage will be probably the finest vintage we've ever made, and it will be true for everybody in the Napa Valley, because 2023 was a real quality year in every category for everybody making wine in the Napa Valley. But the whole wine industry right now is in a low, probably lower than it's been in many, many years, because the young kids aren't drinking wine. They're drinking these other seltzers and that kind of stuff. And the older people aren't drinking as much. And we're going through that cycle right now. But I do believe it'll come back in a couple of years and recycle and become a good business again. But right now, the people that grow the grapes, the vineyard managers and those people, they're struggling. They're leaving grapes on the vine in the Napa Valley, okay? They didn't pick them because the wineries didn't want them.
Wow. Hey, we are up against the clock, but I got to ask you, while we have you on the program, Jim Morris Sr. is going to be on our show. And I know you guys go way back. You're two men that have lived and breathed football. You built teams with discipline and heart. What do you remember the most about your time together in the league, and just what kind of competitor he was and friend?
You know, we were assistants together at Stanford.
Yeah.
He was my linebacker coach at UCLA. I've known him for a long time. Jimmy Mora Jr. is doing a great job in the East Coast here at Connecticut. You know, I remember him when he was a little boy. So I have great memories with Jim Morris here. I really believe he's the most underrated head coach in the league. He was a very, very, very fine football coach, in my opinion. One of the best I ever worked with. And I truly respect the guy.
Yeah. Always a true pleasure when we have the opportunity to catch up with Pro Football Hall of Fame coach, the great Dick Vermeil, and have a wonderful weekend with Carol. And we look forward to connecting again real soon. Thank you, Coach.
Okay, listen, make sure that your sons are hitting the ball straight. Okay?
All right. We'll talk soon. Thanks.
All right.